name is Mandy Monk, but I've also been in the consulting space for almost a decade.
Yeah, sticking around in consulting for a decade tells me you're a very patient human.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe a little too stubborn for your own good.
That's a good way to put it.
Tell us a little bit about the work you do with True Food Kitchen.
So I lead the people team, which is everybody, right? I get a hand in working with 4,000 individuals every day. It's exciting, it's challenging, and it's different every single day. That's the beauty, right? Of getting to work with people because everyone is different. What I love about that and how I approach things is I love to leave a legacy. I want to leave the place in a better position than they were before. Even if I've only really impacted one person, I feel like I've made a change. And so every company that I walk into is about what can I do to leave a positive legacy for the individuals, but for the business as well. From a true food perspective, it is making development and learning important and true growth from a talent perspective. So this business is in true growth mode. And in that growth, you can't grow if your people aren't growing with you. We are a people business and we talk about that all the time. So we're not just in the food space, in the people space, because people are what makes this world go round. So for me, it's about how do I give them opportunities for growth? How do I give them opportunities for personal growth as well as business growth? That's going to be a win-win situation. So in some cases, that might be, some of chefs who English is a second language, right? Like if I can teach them more around English and understanding the English language and how do they do, that's going to grow them personally, but it's also going to help our business as we move forward. And so there's a lot of things that we can do traditionally and just as a foundation that'll really grow the business, but also grow individual people and have a good legacy to leave behind.
I think it's something, especially in growth mode, it's really easy to kind of lose sight of some of those core pieces, some of those initial beliefs that often the founders were really excited about when early on in the business, right? And then you're growing and you're like looking at the P&L and going, hey, construction's not on time for this location or whatever. And it's really easy to get distracted. So that's really refreshing to hear that you're driving, the people side of the business because what matters more than anything else. And people can just lose sight of that.
And it can get lost, but I think if we step back, and that's my role, right, is to make sure that we keep bringing to the forefront that we're a people business and that if we don't bring our people along with us, that growth is going to be a push versus a pull. And it takes way more energy, efforts, money to do a push than it does a pull. Um,
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that phrasing. So you kind of already hit this, but I'm curious because you have more experience besides just True Food Kitchen. You've been doing this a long time. You have a pretty broad perspective. So like kind of as a general rule, regardless of where you're at, what do you love about the job that you do?
Oh, such a great question. I've been in HR for 23 years. I'm aging myself a bit. I would say it's about helping people. And it's about, if I can get someone to see that what they do every day makes an impact and that they can make a difference every day is important, then I feel like I've accomplished that goal, right? One person at a time, one thing at a time. It can be as simple as me walking up to somebody at a table saying, I hope you're having a great day. Oh my gosh, your smile is just so engaging, right? Like maybe they don't even feel like smiling. But if I can get somebody to just engage with that person as an individual and wherever they are, then that makes their life easier and brightens everybody's day. It's hard to look at somebody who is smiling and not smile back.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And so when I think about that, that just uplifts you. And we all want to be in a place that is happy and better and not forced and not fake. And so if we can bring just a little bit of brightness to somebody, and if I can do that every day, I'd love to be able to do that. So I think it's really about one person at one time each day. You don't have to swallow the whole ocean to make that happen.
I think it's really easy, especially in the industries that I serve, that you work in. It's really easy for people operations, HR to get overshadowed by those more, everything is ops driven, right? And which is fantastic. I'm an ops person. I get it. I get a lot of those harder to quantify metrics, like How does investing in training for the entry level employee to make sure that they have soft skills, that they know how to be engaging when working with a guest, right? How does that quantifiably get justified as an expenditure, right? That's the challenge for HR is, right, hey, let's be a business partner and also explain why these things that seem to us like a no-brainer actually are a no-brainer financially. It's not just fluffy stuff.
Yeah, I would tell you, I think in my unique experience, I put on my business hat. So, having had a consulting business for a decade, and I also had an IT business, we'll talk about that later, an IT business even prior to that for many years. I put my business hat on. And so I don't always look at the fluffy metrics that most people look at. So when I put a training module together, the first question I ask is, what do you want the outcome to be? What are you trying to accomplish? Because we can, if they're just going to say, Mandy, go, but I need a job age, right? Mandy, I need this. I'm going to step back and go, I appreciate you telling me what you think you need, but let's talk about what is your goal? What's your strategy? What are you trying to drive? So then I back into that and say, let's look at the metrics that are going to drive that from an operational perspective. Then I can tell you what we're going to drive. So I'll give you an example. When I was at Pizza Hut, one of the things that they asked me was, Mandy, we need to implement this learning management system. It's taken us 18 months. We're not getting where we need to be. We need our franchise partners to be bought in. You've got 10 weeks to do that. And I'm like, wait a minute, you had 18 months. Why do I only get 10 weeks? Right. So one of the things that I did there being 90% franchised, right? There's a lot of influence that needs to go into that. I said, okay, right now you're spending $1 million a year in turnover, right? That was just the cost of training, which was 4 hours of training per server. That was the cost of the hat and the cost of the apron and the name tag. And that's it. I looked at the very base information, none of the other stuff, none of the fancy stuff, right? Just basics. And I said, if I can cut that down, would you be happy? And they're like, yes. How are you going to make that happen? Right. And I said, wait a minute. What if I were to improve your guest sentiment and your guest satisfaction scores? Oh, yeah. Well, of course. Right. But that's really hard to do, Mandy. And I said, I get it. Let me prove it to you. And here's the two metrics that I'm going to look at. I'm going to train all hourly employees, all of your team members within their first 30 days. And I'm going to do that based on here's the standards that we need to train, here's the SOPs, and I'm going to give them a skill assessment and I'm going to give them a knowledge assessment at the end of that. And if you train them within that 30 days and you do those things and they pass those two assessments, I promise you'll see a difference. And in less than a year, we were able to see that plus a 2-point increase in guest satisfaction. And every franchise partner signed up for that training and moved forward. And we're happy to actually sign an agreement that said that they would allow us to audit them on completing all of their training for their hourly people. So I didn't have to talk about the turnover number. I didn't really have to talk about the mushy stuff. I just had to say, I'm going to save you $1 million a year. I'm going to get you 2 guest point satisfaction, which is crazy, right? Just by training them the way that we want to be trained in a consistent manner. So I looked at it from a business point of view, and then I proved it to them by showing it could be done and how easy it was. And you didn't need a lot of things to do that. So I just really brought it down to the bottom line, which is what most people in the operations world are really looking for. Just keep it in my terms.
No, I love that. That's a great example. So that's a great example. You do this day in and day out, both on the consulting side and during your day job. Inherent to your work is helping people love their jobs, right? You and I both know why that's so important and how that affects retention and how that affects customer service stats, ultimately drives the P&L. What are some other ways that you help people love their jobs?
I think a lot of it's through engagement, but the biggest piece is probably purpose. I would say, what are you trying to accomplish as an individual, as a person? And how does that tie to the purpose of what we are trying to do here? The purpose at True Food is real food for real life, empower people to eat better every day. And so in doing that, what are you giving back to people in that force? For me, it was with 3 grown kids, right? At the day when all 3 of them were going to every sports activity, I was going to McDonald's every day to get them chicken nuggets because it was the closest, healthiest, easiest thing when you've got 3 people to get to practice and homework and all the things, right? If I had known that we'd have had a healthy chicken option that is gluten free and air fried like True Food, I totally would have went there and got it to go and we would have been healthy and happy. So in that course, I am helping that mom. I am helping somebody else. And so if I think about, some of the servers and the conversations I've had with them, when I have those conversations with them, they're like, Mandy, I am just passionate about helping somebody else live better and be able to do the things that they're doing. Or when they walk away from the table, they're not bloated, they're not super tired, like they can still go out and enjoy things. And so, how do I engage with them at an individual and what they're trying to grow? But then helping other people, which most people that are in the restaurant industry or in retail or hospitality in any form of, they're trying to help somebody in the course of that. So it's really tying into what makes you happy, what makes you special. How do we engage with you that helps you engage with others? That's going to drive that. And a lot of that has to do with your purpose and what you're trying to accomplish as a business that also can tie back to that individual.
I love the full circle there. We were just talking about how I'm headed to ROFTA next week. I feel about every other week I've been on the road. I managed to not be on on the road every week. Our CEO is taking the shows that I'm not going to. Really, it's a great opportunity for me to connect with retailers and restaurants and C-stores and grocers directly at scale and hear feedback at scale about what matters and what shifts they're worried about in the industry and what shifts they don't care about and how sick they are of hearing the word AI without any context. Have you seen any like hot innovations in the space that you're really excited about or that make you roll your eyes?
AI makes me roll my eyes a little bit. One, I just think it's the cautionary aspect, right? I think every other word is about AI today. And I would say we've had some form of AI for a really long time. But I do think where I would love to see people get is how do you really use it effectively versus it's going to come your way, right? So, like for recruiting, we use it for recruiting purposes, right? Which is a great way to get people, like you can complete an application right through AI, right? That helps individuals who may have disabilities who struggle with typing in like in an application on a keyboard and other things like that. Like there are some really positive elements to driving that point with AI, or that people are like, oh my gosh, you're not even doing your job anymore because you're using new AI. I'm like, no, imagine how much more productive they are because they were able to like reuse something somebody had and they use AI to do that. So now I can get them onto the next project. Right. So I think sometimes we look at it from the negative side as to now people aren't doing their job because AI can do it all for them. I'm like, great. Now I can use their skills for something even better and more important and drive it in a different direction. So that's the one thing that I would say, let's try to look at it from a how can we or a somebody mentioned to me this term and I'm using it all the time now, which is I get to do something versus I have to do something. You get to use AI to help then make things simpler and easier. I'm all about automation when it makes sense and allows our people to use their skills in the way that is really going to drive things forward faster where we can't automate. And so if we can automate with AI and other things, why not? Because then you're getting the most use of your people, you're getting higher quality product, you're getting best use of the skills versus them having to manually enter X, Y, and Z. Right. And so I just think we should look at things in a I get to versus in a have to mentality that I think can be much more positive as we look at things.
No, I love that breakdown. I was at Mertech Executive Summit last, and right before that was FS Tech, food service technology. Yep. At restaurant technology. It was really interesting because at FS Tech, at the tail end of FS Tech, I like asking vendors, attendees, I like asking everyone what their takeaway was. I'm like, so if this show had a theme, what was the theme? And I kept hearing iterations that I ended up summing up as innovator die. Which was pretty dark, but that was like the theme of Avastec. And then the other thing that folks were telling me was, hey, I'm really sick of hearing about AI. They want real examples of how to use the AI to move forward instead of just going, AI, buy it, right? I think it's interesting if we take like a 30,000 foot view and we step back and go, think about the last major innovations, right? The onset of cell phones and apps, or before that, computers coming around, right? I think everyone was saying the same thing, like, no, it's going to take all our jobs. And there was a shift. And with AI, there will be a shift. But I think that pretty soon we're going to look back and go, man, how did we get anything done without this?
Agreed. So I think automation brings a lot, but I do think there's upfront work that has to happen, right? You don't just plug it in and go, right? You really do have to think about what are you trying to accomplish? What's your outcome? And what are you trying to overcome? And so I think a lot of people, let's take automated drive-in. So the drive-through component where it's automated. I was working with a brand previously from a consulting perspective, and they were like, maybe this totally didn't work. And I was like, well, let's talk through that. Why didn't it work? Well, nobody liked it. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty typical. Your finance teams are always going to take out the money as soon as possible. Right. And so I was like, but why didn't it work? It just kept messing up all the orders and it wasn't doing it right and all the things. And I was like, well, interestingly enough, is that AI has to be trained and there's a ramp up period, just like there is with people and change. There's that change curve that has to be accounted for. And so what we ended up doing there was going back a little bit. First, we put the head count back and we said, okay, and we're going to use that head count to train the AI through the drive-throughs first, and we're going to slowly back into that. And then once the AI got trained, then that drive-through person was like, oh my gosh, the orders are coming through great. And now I can do this and I can do this. And now I can have a conversation with the person at the window versus trying to like go fix the next order or whatever. And
Yeah.
so it really, the outcome was how do we better engage with the guests and speed at the window? Well, if the AI isn't trained and you've taken out the person too soon, to manage that change curve, then it fails. So then you get a lot of restaurants and businesses who are like, well, I just wasted all this money on this AI automation tool that did nothing because nobody's using it. They're just turning it off. Right. So I was like, you really got to step back and think about what's your outcome? What are you trying to drive? How do we do this and understand the change curve that kind of goes along with it? So I think we miss a lot of the planning up front. We're so like, oh, that's going to bring us lots of money and lots of speed and lots of things, right? That we jump to that piece. And sometimes the planning takes longer, but it's so much faster on the back end if you can do those things right up front.
Isn't that always the truth with everything?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
No, I love that. Well, I think I've already kept you over time. I appreciate your time so much this afternoon
Sure.
and your insights. Thank you for joining me for a quick chat.
Of course. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on and look forward to many more.
Yeah, me too. All right. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.